Ever heard about the Shanghai apartment block which toppled over in the middle of the night? What about the London office block that accidentally transformed into a deadly heat ray? From a construction mistake that gave rise to one of the most iconic landmarks in the entire world, to a tragic building collapse in China, here are construction projects that didn't go as planned. We start with number 10, Berlin Aquadom. Located inside the Radisson Collection Hotel at the heart of the German capital, the Aquadom was inside the world's largest cylindrical aquarium at 25 meters tall and containing a volume of 1 million liters of water. The Aquadom was the centerpiece of the hotel and featured more than 1,500 individual tropical fish across 100 different species. The aquarium even had a transparent elevator shaft that went through the middle for hotel guests. Being such a massive aquarium in the middle of a hotel, the attraction had to be regularly maintained and cleaned to ensure not just the safety of the fish, but also that of the hotel guests and onlookers. However, in the morning of the 16th of December 2022, the entire aquarium suddenly burst and released 1 million liters of seawater into the hotel lobby and eventually onto the streets outside. This sudden outburst of water devastated the hotel's interior and even managed to completely destroy the building's entrance. In fact, this sudden rush of water was powerful enough that local seismographs managed to detect the shock waves created by the aquarium's collapse. Thankfully, the incident happened early in the morning, when there were only a few people in the area. Only 2 people were injured and subsequently hospitalized because of the aquarium's collapse. Investigations on the incident's probable cause point to material fatigue as the most likely reason for the aquarium's collapse. According to experts, the large temperature difference between the warm water inside the aquarium and the cold air outside, which was reportedly below freezing on the night before the incident, might have caused the acrylic panels of the aquarium to weaken and eventually break. Number 9. Harmon Hotel. The city of Las Vegas is no stranger to costly, regrettable errors. But rarely has an error been so lavish as the Harmon Hotel. Designed by a prestigious team at Foster Partners Architects, the boutique hotel was initially slated to loom fully 47 stories over the world-famous Strip. However, building inspectors halted the project after just 26 stories had been erected, noting that rebar reinforcements in the concrete had been inadequately installed. This meant the upper condo element was abandoned, despite some 88 excited rich punters putting deposits down. Eventually, Vegas authorities demanded the building be pulled down altogether, not with a wrecking ball, but painstakingly floor by floor. The cost of building up to this point had been an estimated $275 million, and the cost of demolition a further $173 million. It turns out, what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas. Number 8. Sydney Opera House. Widely recognized as a triumph of aesthetics and an emblem of a young, forward-thinking Australia, Sydney Opera House is in fact an object lesson in construction failure. In 1957, the Australian government held a contest to design a future national opera house. Winner Jorn Utzon submitted his now iconic sail-like design, which won over the judges, but little actual planning had gone into his pitch. This situation wasn't helped by the hasty construction schedule and the fact the government swiftly decided it wanted 4 theaters rather than the initial 2 inside the same shape structure. Without a single project manager in charge and a plan that evolved haphazardly over time, the budget spiraled. It should have taken 4 years and $4 million Australian dollars to complete, but in the end, it took nearly 14 years and an eye-watering 102 million Australian dollars. Their mistake? Simple, old-fashioned planning. Number 7 is the AON Center. Chicago's AON Center, initially christened the Amico Building, remains to this day an elegant expression of mid-century modernism. Architect Edward Durrell Stone, in what can only be described as an outrageous flex, decided to clad his Grant Park masterpiece in Italian Carrara marble, a material favored by classical artisans since antiquity. The problem with that is, Michelangelo wasn't building 83-story skyscrapers. The Windy City's dramatic temperature fluctuations caused the marble cladding to crack and warp, and when crashed onto the rooftop of the neighboring Prudential Center, well, it was high time for an $80 million granite reclad. At least they probably had insurance. Number 6 is the Tower of Pisa. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site and with more than 6 million people visiting each year, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is one of Italy's most relevant monuments. And yet Italy's most widely recognized is actually a result of a construction flaw. The tower was constructed way back in the 13th century and served as a freestanding bell tower of the Pisa Cathedral. The tower's iconic 4-degree tilt can be traced back from the very beginning of its construction. Beginning in 1173, the tower began to sink into the ground on its side when the second floor was being constructed. As the tower was built on top of loose and unstable subsoil, and because of only a 3-meter deep foundation, the tower slowly started to lean, and the ground could not support the weight of the structure. So how exactly did the tower manage to survive all these years? Why is it not collapsing and just remaining in this position? According to sources, the tower only managed to survive at the time of the construction, because construction was halted for a long time as the Republic of Genoa was preoccupied in conflicts with its neighboring countries. Because of this pause in construction, the underlying soil had enough time to settle and harden over the years. Over the next few decades, the tower's tilt gradually worsened as the structure was finally completed almost 200 years after construction started. By the 1990s, the 4-degree tilt had grown to as much as 5.5 degrees, and the Italian government started to worry that the historic tower might collapse. After the abrupt collapse of another tower in the town of Pavia in 1989, the tower was soon closed to the public and efforts were made for its stabilization. The bells were removed from the top of the tower to reduce weight, while cables and lead counterweights were installed to reduce the structure's tilt. Today, the Leaning Tower of Pisa remains as one of the most visited monuments in Italy, precisely because of a construction mistake, made more than 800 years ago, that gave it its iconic tilt. Number 5. The Millennium Tower. The tallest residential tower in San Francisco stands 58 stories high, but it's shrinking. So much so, between its unveiling in 2009 and today, it has already sunk some 18 inches and started ominously leaning 14 inches to the west. The problem? It's sitting on inappropriate ground, specifically old bay clay. The solution? Dry 50 to 140,000 pound piles, some 250 feet deep into the bedrock way under the city. In case you think that process, which is currently underway, comes cheap, it doesn't. The total bill, including compensation for the tower's well-heeled inhabitants, will come in at over $100 million. And the sidewalk is already cracking, so they'd better get a move on. Number 4. Lotus Riverside Complex. China is a country that is known for its insanely fast, efficient, and record-breaking construction projects, the most populous country in the entire world. It has to keep up with the ever-growing demand for housing and infrastructure. In fact, just in 2021 alone, China managed to build more than 6 million residential properties, making its construction and real estate industries, by far, the world's largest and most developed. However, exactly because of its sheer size and magnitude, coupled with tight schedules and profit margins, China's construction industry is also known for sacrificing quality in exchange for quick returns of investment. And sometimes, these sacrifices prove to be expensive and catastrophic. One incident that eventually proved to be a wake-up call was the collapse of an entire apartment building at the Lotus Riverside complex, located in Shanghai. On the morning of June 27, 2009, the city of Shanghai was greeted by the loud rumbling noise of a 13-story apartment block tumbling to the ground. Almost completely intact, the newly constructed building collapsed on its side, narrowly avoiding its neighboring buildings, killing a 21-year-old construction worker. Investigators figured out that a large quantity of earth excavated to build an underground garage was foolishly dumped onto a nearby creek. That caused the creek to divert underground, sweeping away building number 7's foundations. The estimated cost to the developer of this lackadaisical practice, $30 million, and half a dozen jail terms for those responsible. Number 3, 20 Fenchurch Street. When construction of this innovative curvy skyscraper by the River Thames in London was completed in 2014, local wags took to calling it the pint glass. and engineers probably needed a stiff drink when it became obvious that their gigantic, concave facade was focusing beams of summer sunlight like a molten death ray trained onto the busy pavement below. One local's flash car was partially melted, necessitating an embarrassing payout, and the hasty installation of a gigantic sunscreen that set developers back a cool $10 million. Number 2. Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Jobbing construction workers tasked with putting up what was at the time the third longest suspension bridge in the world could already see which way the wind was blowing. That's why they nicknamed the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in Washington state Galloping Gertie. Even before it was finished, some bright spark reckoned it would be a great idea to use cheap plate girders underneath a roadbed. From a rocky start, the bridge eventually just collapsed after 4 months and 7 days in a modest 40-mile-an-hour wind. The cost? Roughly $6 million, which in today's money after inflation works out not far off $1 billion. And finally, number 1. The Intempo skyscraper with a height of more than 200 meters and consisting of 47 floors. The Intempo skyscraper, located in Benidorm, Spain, is the tallest residential building in the European Union. Following a €92 million loan from Spanish savings bank, Caixa Galicia, construction on the skyscraper began back in 2006. At the time, the project was expected to take only 3 years to complete. But just nearly a year after work on the project started, the global financial crisis of 2008 severely hindered the development. All construction work was suddenly put to a stop as the construction company responsible for the project went bankrupt. The skyscraper received massive media attention when a rumor was spread that no elevators were planned for the construction. A Spanish newspaper published the story, after which it was quickly spread by other media. But as it turned out, this was a false claim, to which the sales manager responded, "We are constructing the highest residential skyscraper in Europe, so how is it possible to build without elevators?" But even if the story isn't true, not everything went as planned in this project. In 2010, construction on Intempo resumed when a new company took over the project. However, workers went on 4 whole months with no pay, and they threatened to go on strike after all the problems with their salaries. When a lift was installed for the workers to use on site, the elevator crashed while 13 people were inside. But fortunately, the emergency brakes worked, preventing a tragedy, and only 2 workers were taken to the hospital. Apart from that, Spain's real estate market soon bounced back. After the financial crisis, things were starting to look positive for the construction of Intempo, which was now scheduled to be completed in early 2014. However, just 1 year before the new date, the architects involved in the project suddenly resigned, declining to tell the media their reasons for the decision. Just a year later, the project's owner filed for bankruptcy, leading to speculations of the architects leaving because of financial problems. Intempo was once again left languishing for the next few years. Finally, in 2017, a company called SDP Global took charge of the project and completely turned it around. After an investment of €60 million, the company was able to complete the project and even managed to overcome the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. 15 years after construction on the Intempo first began, and after going through many different owners and financial problems, the skyscraper finally opened its doors in 2021. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay connected.